The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 108 of the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Hey, please follow the show on social media. We are on Facebook and Twitter. It's just the Sample Chapter Podcast. You can find us very easy in there. We're also on YouTube. And of course, if you'd like to reach out, my email is samplechapterpodcast@gmail.com. Hey, I want to give a special shout out to all you listeners in Argentina and Uganda. They are new countries to the show, and they have been just downloading quite a bit here lately. So thank you so much to the people in that country, the wonderful listeners. I really appreciate everything that you're doing, and hopefully you're finding some novels and authors that you enjoy. And if you find one that you like, don't forget to leave a review for that author. But then back here in the States, the show is downloaded in every state, which is very nice here in the U.S. But much to my surprise, California is my most downloaded state, like by a wide margin. It's really surprising. Followed by Oregon and then Missouri, my home state here. They are in third place. I'm not sure what's going on with my listeners here in Missouri. Come on, we got to bump it up quite a bit, but still at the same time, I think that's really, really cool that the show is got a following in California. And if you're listening to the show right now and you live in California, give me a shout out. Let me know who you are and where you're listening, and I will shout out back to you on the very next episode. So hit me up. Let me hear where you're from. I'm looking forward to it. In personal news, I had writing club the other night, and that went really, really well. Always have a lot of fun there. I took a chapter from what will be my third book, The Bandit Chronicles. Took that with me to show and read to everybody to see what they thought. And, I had a really good reception. Thankfully, there's no big changes necessary. But what's cool, and the whole reason behind this group is somebody caught something that they pointed out. It wasn't something that I overlooked per se. I kind of caught onto it too when I was reading it, that I hadn't noticed it before. But yeah, somebody mentioned it, and then we talked about this scene and kind of fleshed out an idea. And then in talking with them, realized that the next chapter I'm going to need to bump up the action a little bit. As for my second novel, which is Novel Idea, the goal right now is to have the pre-order up by March 20th of this month. And I will be sure to let you know as soon as that pre-order is available. The release date that I'm shooting for is April 1st. And the reason I haven't set that yet and announced it yet is because I'm still finishing up a couple of chapters of edits on chapters that I want to get done before I do that, because this will be my first ever pre-order, and I don't want to mess that up. I know if you mess that up on Amazon and you miss your pre-order date, then they ban you from doing it for the next year, which, I guess it's not the end of the world. But still, I want to do it right the first time. But the other reason I'm looking at March 20th is because that weekend is Planet Comic-Con. And I would like to have some cards made up to hand out and let people know that, this book is going to be available April 1st. Here you go. You can go and pre-order it right now so that way you don't miss out. I'd kind of like to hand out quite a few if I can, but we'll see how that goes, and whether or not I make the time to do that. But again, Planet Comic-Con, that is the weekend of the 20th through the 22nd. I will be there. I'm going to be there visiting and hanging out on the 21st myself. And then on the 22nd, I have one panel right now that I'll be doing on creator-owned content. It'll be me, Joey Mills of Pop Goes the Culture Network, and the hosts of the Bungalow Podcast. And that's bungalow with two N's, like, bun. So I'm looking forward to meeting them. I've checked out their podcast, listened to a couple episodes, and they're a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that and taking notes right now on the on the panel and what to talk about, some things to do. And I think for the most part, it's going to be a Q&A session, people asking us. So we'll see what happens, but I want to make sure and have some material prepared so that we'll be able to talk about things and fill the silence in case there's a lot of crickets. Well, speaking of Pop Goes the Culture, I want to say thank you again to Joey Mills and the network over there at Pop Goes the Culture. We are a part of that, along with several other wonderful shows. Most of them are all pop culture related in some manner, but at their website, popgoestheculture.com, you can also check out tons of blogs and movie and book reviews, game reviews for all kinds of things, but it's all pop culture related and all very, very cool. So don't forget to click that link in the show notes so that you can find out more about that. And of course, our other network, Project Entertainment. You heard the little bumper at the beginning of the show, and we are now a part of that network, Project Entertainment Network. It's a lot of cool guys, and I believe they are now back up over 20 different shows again. And those shows are, I believe most of them are author related in some way. I know not all of the shows are about writing, but a good number of them are, and it's lots of cool stuff. I listen to probably more than half of the shows on Project Entertainment, at the very least. And I know I've tuned in to at least 2/3, maybe 3/4 of these shows there. But yeah, with Project Entertainment, there's tons of great shows, just like this one.
Bizzong!
It's Bizzong, the Bizarre and Weird Fiction Podcast, hosted by me, Mr. Frank. Bizzong is the showcase podcast of the bizarro fiction genre. And those who write weird and read weird are going to love this podcast, where each week we talk to everyone who is anyone in the bizarre and weird fiction realm. So join us here every Monday, presented exclusively by Project Entertainment Network.
While I'm giving thanks, I want to make sure and thank Scrivener, my favorite writing software. I use Scrivener every day. I'm using it on all of my books now going forward. It's so awesome to have a chapter breakdown on the left-hand pane. Also, what's been very handy to have, especially when writing a series, is my character breakdown, so that I can remember what character is what and what's the name of this alien or that alien race and where are they from. You know, all that is right there in your left-hand pane. No more scrolling or going through notebooks of notes and trying to find out where something is. It's right there. Make a mistake on a chapter, or you realize you need to move a chapter, it's as easy as drag and drop. I love Scrivener. I know you're going to love it too. Stay tuned for a commercial from them and find out how you can save 20% on the regular desktop version. And of course, my favorite self-storage facility right here in Warrensburg, U-Tor-All. With 2 facilities, both of them fully fenced in and gated. You'll have your own private gate code, well lit all night long with LED lighting, climate control, non-climate control, more than 60 cameras recording 24 hours a day, and both facilities are run off of solar power, so it's not only green but very clean. You know, LED, it's nice clean light. But the facilities themselves are extremely clean. It's one of the biggest compliments that they get is how clean the place is, along with how nice the managers are and how well people are taken care of. So check them out online at U-Sto-All.net for more information. That is spelled the letter U, STORALL.net. Well, this week's guest is none other than the wild and wacky Frank Edler. Hey, you heard his commercial a while ago for his podcast, Bizzong, and it's a great show, and Frank is a previous guest, and I loved having him back on here. We had a fantastic chat. You know, he's one of those guys that we get to talking, and next thing you know, it's been an hour and a half, and it was a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun talking to Frank. I love the way his brain works. You know, his whole matter-of-fact attitude when it comes to the subject matter of what he's writing. You know, whether he's talking about a man-eating brain or zombie bankers, or a cat as currency. It's just very matter of fact the way he's talking about, like, oh yeah, these, zombie bankers walking around and talking about. I can't even do it. I can't even do it. You'll have to listen because he does a great zombie banker. It's too funny. We are talking about his latest book, came out a week ago today, actually, Catcoin, and you're going to hear a fantastic sample chapter. So stay tuned for that right after a word from our sponsor. Jason here. Hey, I wanted to take a moment and tell you about my favorite writing tool, Scrivener. Now, I know you've heard about Scrivener because their writing software has been embraced by hundreds of thousands of other writers like you and I, from the novice to best-selling novelists. The reason we all use it is because of Scrivener's core concept to bring all the writing tools you use together in a single application. And with tools like automatic backup, character maps, project goals, and let's not forget that amazing corkboard, you can see why I use Scrivener every day. As a bonus for Sample Chapter podcast listeners, use code CHAPTER for 20% off your desktop version. Scrivener writing software, built by writers for writers. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a wild and wacky episode of the Sample Chapter podcast. Hey, this week we are once again going back, checking up with some past authors. I've got a great guest join us today. His mother was an alien, his father was a lamppost, fed a steady dose of soap bars as a child in punishment for his foul mouth and incessant pranks. Little did anyone know the soap only made him stronger, faster, more agile. I'm talking about the one and only Frank Edler. Frank, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Jason, it is a pleasure to finally join you once again.
Once again, yes. This is so much fun. I had a great time with you last time talking about, oh man, I didn't look that one up. What did we talk about last time?
I was pitching Scatterbrain at the time.
Scatterbrain. Yes, that's right. And good grief, I should know that because I went in there and read it.
You did. Unfortunately, liked it too, which is a bonus.
It was a lot of fun. It was my first trip down the Bizarro. And it was one that I'm looking forward to traveling some more.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
How have you been, man? It's been a little while. It was October of 2018 when we did this last.
Yeah, I've been well, and I've been working in that time on this new book that I'm finally getting out now. It was a struggle writing-wise. I had a kind of rough year writing in 2019, and this new book, Catcoin, it took up far too much of my time, and it was a struggle for a number of reasons. But I've seen it through, and 2020, it's seeing the light of day now. That's
awesome. Yeah, I mean, you say it was light, but I mean, you had Middletown 4, Beers and Fears, Breaking Bizarro, and now, of course, today's book, Catcoin. I mean, that's a pretty good, pretty nice haul there for somebody that doesn't write so much, as you say.
I guess so. And a lot of those things, like Middletown 4 and the Beers and Fears, they served as sort of distractions because I wrote Catcoin. I started it out. I think I got about 10,000 words through it and realized I was writing the story all wrong and all but scrapped just about every one of those 10,000 words and started over. And then the Beers and Fears thing came up. So I was like, all right, let me do this and focus on this now and put this Catcoin away and got through that. And then got back to Catcoin, and it was getting frustrated by Catcoin. And then the Middletown project came up. I was able to write for that and kind of put Catcoin aside. I kept using it as distractions away from Catcoin because Catcoin, as far as my work goes, is a big departure from what I usually write. Those crazy, funny horror monster stories. Catcoin is something I've been. I struggle to even define it. The best I can tell you is that it's an action adventure, maybe techno thriller, but it's got the funny too. Like that's the only thread that kind of keeps it still my brand. But it's not like horror monsters and anything like that. And so while I was writing it the whole time, I kept second guessing myself. I'm like, what am I doing? What am I writing? And the concept for Catcoin is, I mean, the simple pitch for it is it's the story of Bitcoin, but with cats. because I got really, really into learning and the concept of Bitcoin and learning the history of it. And it's just this brand new, exciting thing to me. And I got to the point where I was so into it, following the markets and reading all the stories and figuring out how to invest in it and mine it and all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, I want to read fiction about this. So I took to Kindle and I'm looking for, cryptocurrency or Bitcoin fiction. And really nothing came up. There were a couple of books that I found, but they were the Bitcoin aspect of it was secondary to the true plot of it. The plot was something else, and the Bitcoin was like a means to an end. So there wasn't the book out there that I wanted to read, which was like actual cryptocurrency fiction. And I said, shit, they always say you got to write the book you want to read. And the book I wanted to read didn't exist. And so that's what started me on this path to write Catcoin. But it's so different. And since there's nothing else out there really for me to compare it to, it was a task trying to write it, and lots of second guessing, lots of what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? Am I wasting my time on this? And pushing myself through it the whole way there. So it was a long, slow process. Plus, of course, there was a lot of research going into it. It's not the most technical thing. I didn't want it to be technical, but I still wanted to have things sort of right, so I didn't get called out on it too much. If anybody did know about
enough facts to make it believable.
Yeah, correct. Very correct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that I still have a lot of respect with the idea that you started the book, you wrote, 10,000 words or so in it, and then stopped because you knew something wasn't right, took a break from it, and then came back to it later, picked it back up. And did you read through that and find the things that were working, or did you have a new idea and figured out, okay, this is the direction it needs to go instead?
It was the point of view I was writing it. It was the sort of concepts I had come up with. Like, it's just not there's no story there for me to tell, sort of a thing, that I have no story here. I'm being because it's a factually based thing. It just kind of became this really boring, just matter of fact statements of fact. And there was no story. There was nothing salacious or tempting about it. To make a reader interested to pull them through. I said, I gotta get rid of this stuff. So, I kept the concept about it. And so the cat I sort of initially created, and it even started out, I believe, in a first person point of view and went on to a more third person type of narrative. In general, the narrative goes a little bit back and forth. When it's from the cats, the Catcoin follows around the first Catcoin that became a Catcoin, became money. And the cat's name is One. So when One is talking, there's a first person point of view. And then all the other parts of the stories, other chapters, where we step away from One. Then it goes into a third person narrative. So I played with that a little bit. And I still hope to this day that works out. But all my editors and everything have said it's just fine. So.
Well, I've been hearing a lot about it. And of course, by the time this episode comes out, it will have already dropped. It comes out February 28th, so everybody, make sure you go check this out. But it looks incredible, and I can't wait to come back to this. But let's go back to Middletown 4, the Unrestful. You got a story in there along with several other previous guests, Chuck Buda, Tim Meyer, Lucas Milliron, Armand, of course, and then several people I would love to get on there. How did this come about?
I got a message one day from Armand Rosamillion and it said, you need to write a story for this. so, I mean, it really kind of was that crazy, but the Middletown, the anthology series, I guess is the best way to call it, it's a zombie anthology series that's been going on for some time now. And there's been a steady group of writers that have been involved with it from the first book on. And I think by the time they got to 4, a lot of people, I guess, lost interest or didn't want to, participate any longer. So there were a few slots that opened up, and the author Jack Wallen is the one who puts it together. He's the creator of the anthology series. So I guess he basically asked Armand if he knew anybody who might be interested, and I guess since Armand's my boss as far as podcasting goes, he just said you are going to do this, and I did, but. he could have asked me. He could not have demanded it from me, and I could have said no. I'm just joking around. But I do, as a rule so far, when somebody says there's this writing project, do you want? Like, I just say yes, and I go after it, as long as it's pretty much, has minimal requirements for me. Like, I'm gonna get paid, which was it was there. I'm getting paid for that. So I really had no problem with it, and it was kind of funny because it is a zombie apocalypse book, and I swore to myself I would not write zombies any longer, and I'm like, oh, of course it's zombies. So I try to get as playful as I can when I do that. My story in that just became an homage to the drive-in, so I had a lot of fun with it that way, and just made this Joe Lansdale homage, his drive-in series, and got myself through it that way.
Very cool. And then I'm gonna skip over Beers and Fears to Breaking Bizarro. Mm-hmm. What was your story in this one?
Oh, that story is a story I've had a long time. It's kind of just sitting around in the trunk waiting for a place to be published. I actually had somebody who wanted to take it. It was a magazine, a literary magazine, and they agreed to take it. But by the time that story would have showed up in that magazine, the magazine had gone defunct, so it was kind of back to me again. The story is called, I don't have it in front of me, it's called Night of the Living Dead. Oh, man, I can't think of that. It's a bastardization of Night of the Living Dead, so it's like Day of the Living Alive or something like that. And it's sort of just a whole twist of, instead of zombies come back to life, in the real world, it's dead people that have come to life, like in the afterlife, and I play with the whole concept of, they always say, you can't take your money with you. Well, in the afterlife, people have figured out how to take their money with them, and all these people are fighting over like goods and services, and like the afterlife, where it's supposed to be free of all these earthly desires, are now that we have these desires again. There's bankers running around. Instead of saying brains, they're like, reality investments, and all this stuff. So it's just kind of a fun thing I wrote that twists.
Oh my gosh. I just looked it up. I can see why you had a hard time with it. Dawn of the Night of the Dying Alive.
Dawn of the Night of the Dying Alive. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that one around, and when Breaking Bizarro put out a call for anthology, I'm like, this could be the place, because that came out from Death's Head Press. They really started making waves last year, getting a lot of really good books out there by very good, well-known authors. And one of the co-owners of the press, Death's Head Press, he's into bizarro fiction, so he wanted to do a bizarro fiction anthology, sort of a flagship anthology for his press, because they don't want to be solely just a horror press, just kind of play around all the edges of what horror can be. So they wanted to do a bizarro type anthology, and I think it was a good match. And I know a couple of reviews have actually pointed out my story in there as one of the better ones, so it was kind of cool.
That is cool. Well, speaking of one of the better ones, it's one of my favorite here lately, has been the Beers and Fears, The Haunted Brewery, with you and Tim Meyer, Chuck Buda, and of course Armand Rosamilia. The four of you got together, put collection of 4 stories, or I guess it's 3 stories with one wraparound. It was awesome. I loved it, and getting a copy in the mail with all of your all signatures was like a highlight of my month, at least. Maybe the week. Yeah, it was good for the year. But that was great, and getting to sit down and go through it. Your story, Have a Drink on Me, it's hard to say which one was the better of them, but they were all enjoyable. What a great idea. How did this come up?
That book was a monster of a hit for all of us. It did really well, and I'm glad you enjoyed that. The idea for Have a Drink on Me, we knew we wanted to do the Haunted Brewery, and it was kind of up to us there. And just like you said, the idea was sort of to tell 3 stories about this brewery that used to be an insane asylum, essentially, and how it's been haunted. Tim Meyer was the one who originally came up with the concept for what we were going to do. So he was going to write these wraparound stories for each story so that it all kind of threads into one piece. So he came up with the concept of a reporter interviewing the owner of this bar, and the owner's sort of telling stories of the past. So Chuck Buda got the decade, the 70s. He had to tell a story about this bar from the 70s. I got the 80s, and Armand got the 90s. So I had to go in with the 80s. I had to think 80s stuff. We're going to have Rubik's Cube and big hair and all that type of stuff, and the music is going to be, new wave and this sort of early 80s punk and stuff like that. But I'm like, how do I do a haunted brewery? And I technically really didn't do a haunted brewery so much as a possessed by demons type of a brewery, which I think is close enough of a concept. Yeah. But the rub of it, I think the thing that kind of makes my story stand out a bit is because it involves gymnastics. And that came about because I have a daughter who's she competes on a gymnastics team. She's a traveling competitive team. And so a lot of my life is taken up by driving her to meets. Even, she practices 9 hours a week. So I'm driving her to and from practice several times a week. So, Chuck and Armand and everything, they're always trying to figure out my schedule and when can you do this and can you come right? And it always seems like, especially this time of year, I'm like, I can't, I got gymnastics, so they're always picking on me. Frank's got gymnastics. So my joke was I'm going to write a gymnastics horror for this book. and that was basically what I tried to execute, the world's first gymnastics horror story.
It was a lot of fun. I was not expecting Mary Lou Retton to be mentioned in this, and just so many great references throughout, and it was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
So that was great, and then you got back to work, pulled out the Catcoin, and like I said, I've been hearing lots about it, hearing you talk about it, hearing other podcasts, friends of ours talking about it as well. And like I said, by the time this episode comes out, it'll already be here. So what can people expect whenever they go to open this up?
So I wanted to write Catcoin as a way to help people understand Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, because it's not an easy concept to understand. Money that's not actually anything you can hold on to. And, I believe that we're going to be there one day using a cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin or something else. I think the world's just headed in that direction in general. So it's just sort of my love letter to cryptocurrency and helping the world understand it by, helping people understand how nothing, the idea of nothing can be money. But I'm going to change that idea from nothing to cats to kind of help explain it all.
That's what I was going to ask. So it is like literal cats.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh my gosh. I love the way your brain works. This sounds exciting.
I had cats on the brain. There was a different story I had in mind before I started, writing Catcoin. I had a different sort of big work in mind. That was a genie story that involved cats. And I kind of started it, and it just wasn't quite working. And then this idea came in my head. So I needed something, I needed to make something have value. That kind of seems silly, and to have fun with. So I already had cats on the mind, and I stuck with cats because, with Bitcoin, you're quote unquote mining Bitcoin. You're just having your computer or your mining system, solve problems, and you're awarded with these Bitcoins, which it's nothing. It's just zeros and ones in the digital world. And then you have these Bitcoins, but and there's a finite amount of Bitcoin. Like that's kind of what gives it a value, is like once all these X amount of Bitcoin are mined, there's no more. It's not like dollars and pesos and francs and euros that you can just keep on printing until infinity. There will come a day when there's just no more Bitcoin to mine, and that's really what gives it its value. So I'm like, what else is there? Like a lotto, but really people can get to the end of it. And I was like, well, cats. There's cats all over the place. Strays. Everybody's talking about strays and everything. And but eventually, if everybody picks up cats, there won't be any more strays and anybody left on the street. So it's sort of worked in that way to have something that can, eventually we can have all the cats for ourselves and just call them money instead of cats.
Oh my goodness. That's got me wondering, like, okay, so sometimes I really hate my cat. I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I should get rid of it. But then this makes me think, well, maybe I need to breed it. That way I'm prepared when the catapocalypse comes and I'm rich. I'll have a lot of cats.
Yeah, you'll have lots of cats. You'll be Catcoin rich. Get them.
Oh my gosh, this is awesome. All right, well, so what are you working on now, and what's next for you?
Well, I wanted to combat what I called the disastrous year of writing last year. It wasn't really disastrous, just slower than I'd like to have been. So I've buckled down, and I'm using it. You mentioned before listening to the Mondo Method podcast, and they often talk about they use spreadsheets to kind of track their writing, or they'll even just put up a calendar and put a green circle on days they wrote and an red X on circles of days they didn't write, and just have a visualization of your progress in writing. So I'm like, I like that idea. I need that sort of thing. So I went and searched out some word tracking spreadsheets on the internet and came up with one that looked pretty good. It was a one that was built to write for, when you're writing during NaNoWriMo. So I like that. It's got a lot of color coding and stuff to, tell you how many words, and the closer you are to your target, the more it turns green, or if you're too short, it turns yellow or red. So it's a nice visual, quick representation of where you are, and it keeps track of where you're at by the month. So I set out, I want to do 20,000 words a month. I think that's a manageable goal for me, 20,000 words a month. It gives me the weekends off, and, I can write on the weekends and get there quicker, and it's just not too breakneck. It's attainable for me.
Wow.
So I started that in December, and I was probably hit 20,000 like 4 or 5 days ahead of time. I'm like, okay, this will work, So I carried that into my 2020 writing goals. And in January, I surpassed 20,000 words. February, I had to switch gears. I wrote the new Beers and Fears 2 story. I just finished today as we're recording this. So that's complete, and I'm going back to the major thing I'm writing right now that I've been using this new method is a new death book. I had Death Gets a Book out, one of my first releases, and it felt like it was time to revisit death again. Now, it's not like Death 2 or anything like that, because Death Gets a Book is a standalone story. Even the characters that are going to be in this new death book have nothing to do with the characters that were in the last one. And I kind of designed that world that way that I can keep going back to that world that I've created without actually, making it a series or anything. I like the idea of having standalones. I'm not a series guy. I don't really read series, so I shy away from writing that stuff. So I've kind of created a world where I can write about Grim Reapers left and right. They're just not the same Grim Reaper, because in my world there's more than one. There's many Grim Reapers. It's a whole world full of Grim Reapers. So that's what I'm doing here, and it helped, I think, because I know that world. It made it easy to get into this new writing goal I have, and I'm spitting out words like crazy. And I should have. The book will be done by March, and I'm hoping to have that out pretty much by June or July.
Awesome, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love getting to connect with you and so many other writers every Sunday, and I'm gonna just take a moment and invite everybody out there listening. Sundays, a whole bunch of us on Twitter get together doing the Mondo Method, which is writing as much as you can for 15 minutes at the top of each hour. Just write what you can, see what you can do, even if it's 100 words or 50 words, it's more than what you had before. And it's just that 1 day a week where somebody's going to hold you accountable, and you get some words done. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it takes such a minimal effort really to do, like you said, 15-minute sprints. You can do, nobody adheres necessarily to 15 minutes. I do 15-minute sprints, and it works for me. You can do them at the top of the hour. You can do them, when you feel like. It's just kind of try some 15-minute sprints, try 10 minutes, try half-hour sprints, whatever works for you. And I think you'd be amazed at how much output you get out of it. I know I had years ago, before this Mondo Method came about, I learned about the Pomodoro method, what they call. It's basically, the old-fashioned tomato kitchen timers, Pomodoro. And, you're just sitting there, you do this. This can apply to anything in life. Like if you have to do the laundry, do chores, at work, you can use it. You can apply it to anything, but it's biting off your responsibilities in 15-minute chunks. And the idea is that you set the timer for 15 minutes and you go about your work. In this case, it will be writing. And you write for 15 minutes. And in the Pomodoro method, after the 15 minutes is up, you get a 5-minute break just to do whatever you want. When I write, I have a 5-minute break. I don't know, go check Facebook, go see what's going on in #Mondo Method, Twitter feed, stuff like that. The 5 minutes is up, do another 15 minutes, and you do that cycle. In the Pomodoro method, you're supposed to do it, I believe, 4 times. And then after 4 times, you get like a half-hour break and continue on like that. So basically, the Mondo method is a modification of that, where Armand Rosamilia took that concept, but he wasn't interested in doing those back-to-back-to-back what would you call them? Just rotations. So what he did was at the top of the hour, just do 15 minutes. And then at the top of the next hour, do 15 minutes. So you got 15 minutes of working, 45-minute break, 15 minutes of working, 45-minute break. And as you go, I think the more and more, I know what I find is like my first 15-minute writing sprint will be like 300 or 400 words. And then the second one I do, it'll be around 500 or 600 words. And then so once I get into a rhythm on the day, I'm spitting out anywhere between like 500 and 700 words. And if you do that 3 or 4 times, you've got 2,000 plus words on the day for, I don't know, you do 4 15-minute sprints and you've got an hour. So it's pretty simple, and you get more output than I think you realize when it's all said and done. So it's a fun thing to do. And yes, absolutely join us on Sundays. Follow the #Mondo Method.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love it, and I've found that it really recharges my battery. I've actually started, I do my writing at the top of the hour, and then I'll spend the next 45 minutes editing on a different story. And, what's helped me with that is the two things keep feeding each other. And it's a nice little 45-minute break where I can go back to my editing. It's great. I love it, and I love having all the people on there that are supporting each other with this.
Yeah, it's nice to, everybody's got each other's back. It's certainly not a competition of who can write the most words. It's just a support system where, like, hey, all right, good on you. You did that much. And I always try to, like, say, hey, I wrote this many words. And here's what I'm working on. What are you working on? Just kind of share that kind of camaraderie amongst writers.
Absolutely. Yep.
Nice Sunday morning, afternoon, whenever you do it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, and I didn't mean to get us off on a tangent for the Mondo Method, but I know you're always one in there, so I figured we'd talk about that for a moment. Well, tell us, before we get going here, tell us about Bizzong. How's that going, man? The Bizzong Podcast, how's it going?
Bizzong Podcast, still chugging along, still doing the thing. Maybe when we last spoke, probably when we last spoke, it was called Bizzong, subtitled the Bizarre and Weird Fiction Podcast. I've since sort of modified that moniker to the Weird and Wacky Fiction Podcast, because as much as I love and enjoy Bizarro, what I've come to find out about myself is I just don't really write Bizarro. I enjoy the heck out of the people who do write Bizarro and the stories of Bizarro, but I've always wanted Bizzong to be my writing school. So, I'm interviewing all these wonderful people, but I'm not learning more focused on what I write. So I'm like, I need to be talking more to people that aren't necessarily Bizarro. And I kind of rebranded the podcast to Weird and Wacky to cover that. So I could say wacky and have funny writers like a Jeff Strand on, which I did. And so the podcast keeps chugging along. I still do have many bizarre writers on, but I also have writers on of all kinds of ilk. I even have kind of straight horror writers on anymore. I almost don't necessarily even care, because a lot of that straight horror stuff, I mean, some of it is a little cuckoo crazy anyway. You got a writer like Tim Meyer who comes out with a story called Limbs from White House Press about a guy who had a thing for people without
yeah.
like, legitimate fetish. So that's a little weird, and I think it still qualifies for my podcast.
I think so. And very much, I think you experience very much like what I do, that having so many different kinds of authors on there, it really helps inform my own writing and gives me a little bit of an education talking to somebody outside my realm.
Yeah, I'm always looking for that little trick or technique that maybe somebody else does that I haven't even considered, whether it be marketing, whether it be writing, anything like that. What are you doing that's not necessarily the Mondo method, but that keeps you writing, keeps the wheels turning and the juices flowing. That's the type of stuff I'm interested in. Are you doing something really crazy marketing wise, like we do? Everybody kind of digs our Beers and Fears brewery tour that we do, and people are always saying, yeah, I want to try that. So, what are you doing? Are you going to ice cream shops and selling books, and what are those extra little things everybody else is doing out there, and learn that way?
Yep, absolutely, man. And what day does Bizzong come out?
Bizzong comes out on Mondays, just about every Mondays.
Fantastic. All right. Where can people find and follow you?
They can follow me. I'm out there on the Facebook, Frank J. Edler. I'm on Twitter at NJMetal. It's a little different, but you can find me at NJMetal. I'm on Instagram, and those are the most important ones. And I mean, a Google search of Frank Edler will get you where you need to go if you're looking for me.
Fantastic. All right, and of course, everybody, we're going to have the links for all this in the show notes, along with the Bizzong Podcast and all the social media. So make sure you click the links in the show notes to follow along. Hey, Frank, man, I appreciate, in spite of all the technical difficulties we've been having in the background, hopefully nobody will know the better of it. Nobody will be the wiser, but we'll see what we can do. And I appreciate you coming back on here, my friend.
And I appreciate, before we get into it, I do appreciate you doing the show. It's a very valuable show to writers and readers alike, which is a bonus. And I do got to say, I know you mentioned technical issues, but I know you do your due diligence. You make all those people reading their sample chapters just sound like gold. And I'm sure this episode will be no different, and nobody will know what you're talking about when it comes to technical issues.
You are too kind, my friend. Too kind.
I'm a podcaster, and I understand and appreciate the level of dedication going into cleaning up a podcast to get it sound just right, free of all those glitches.
Yeah, there are some days longer than others, but it's all worth it. I have a blast doing this. So thank you for saying so, man.
Absolutely.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to step aside, grab a drink and a cigar, and listen to the one and only Frank Edler with his latest book, Catcoin.
Chapter 1. 1. My name is 1. That's it. Just 1. It's my name. It's also my number. I'm a cat. I'm currency. I'm money. I am Catcoin. Catcoin is the new money. Dollars are gone. Euros are dead. Adios to pesos. The world has gone feline, baby. You can buy anything with Catcoin. Bread, milk, eggs, solicited sexual services, politicians, and college educations. All of it bought and paid for with Catcoin. All over the world. I'm the first Catcoin. That's why he named me 1. He being Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of the concept of Catcoin. I'm not sure what number we're up to now, but eventually it will stop. Catcoin is finite. That's what makes the whole feline currency, or philo-currency for all the hep cats, work. Without a cap on the number of Catcoins available to the world, a cat would never retain any value. Once an adorable little kitty, such as myself, retains value, it becomes a Catcoin. The economics of it are simple. The execution is a little more involved. The nuances spin away from my level of comprehension, but fortunately for me, I don't have to understand it. All I need to do is go with the flow. So life is pretty easy for me. Eat, sleep, shit, repeat. Until I'm exchanged as currency for goods, then it's on to the next adventure. Truth be told, my life before becoming a Catcoin wasn't that different. Eat, shit, sleep, repeat. Only difference was I was tied down to a single place. Nobody shuffled me around the globe like they do now. I'm good either way. All the travel doesn't bother me. I do miss my roots from time to time. I started out in Rome, the one in Italy. The food was really good there. The smells of the city were quite unique. People everywhere. Mice everywhere. Oh, and did I mention the food was out of this world? Not just the food, but the wine. Oh, the wine. Even a cat could not enjoy a simple meal in Rome without a glass of wine to complement. I prefer red myself. Very dry. Desert dry. I'm not into pairing Vince with proteins. If I'm eating steak, pork, fish, or dairy, give me dry red wine. Or a slurp. Or a lick off the pavement as it runs out through the crack in an old garbage can. Look, I don't have a problem, okay? I just really like wine. The bitch of it is, though, is in my pristine white fur. It's now stained a permanent shade of Merlot around my mouth and whiskers. No matter. A small price to pay for that dry, earthy goodness with just a hint of currants on the end. If I had opposable thumbs, I would have become a sommelier instead of money. I'm aware of which years have superb vints. I know the best regions to source Sauvignon. I understand which altitudes are optimal for the most robust Chiantis. I know wine. I know wine and I know where to get wine. All I have to do is hang out back of Rome's finest restaurants. That lady in the Tramp movie knew what it was talking about. All the cool cats know the back doors where it's at when it comes to sourcing the finest wine. The patrons leave half-empty glasses on the tables all the time. They don't want to come off as uncouth heathens. The kitchen staff never pour good wine down the drain. That would be sacrilege. They pour it in bowls and place it out back for the gatti. That's Italian for cat, you uncultured porco. The day I became a Catcoin, I was out prowling for wine. It was early in the morning. The sun had not fully risen past the facade of the mighty Roman Colosseum. Look, don't judge me. I needed some hair of the dog, so to speak. I'd really put away the wine the night before, and my little cat had pounded like a bass from a discotheque. I knew a slurp or 7, first thing in the morning, would knock the headache out with haste. I prowled the area around the Trevi Fountain. That area was always loaded with tourists, pickpockets, artists, and gypsies. I could always count on finding a discarded bottle of wine, tipped over, bleeding out its soured swill between the cracks of the cobblestones. On that fateful morning, however, I hit pay dirt. I found an entire bowl of wine sitting out in the open. I should have questioned my good fortune. A bowl of wine set out by a restaurant late at night was normal, but a fresh bowl of wine sitting out at daybreak was almost unheard of. Espresso is the elixir of the morning hours. Had I not needed to wash away the cobwebs from the night before, I would have been suspect. Instead, I lapped it up. It was so good, too. Robust with tannins, giving it the perfect dry characteristics and impressive legs. There were notes of fig and tuna. I'd say it was vinted around the Tuscany region in 67, a very good year indeed. In fact, the vint was so perfect that I gulped down the entire bowl. Not only did I wipe out my feline headache, but I started to buzz anew. It had been a while since I drank the day after a long bender, and I embraced the warm, fuzzy feeling like it was my favorite cozy pillow. The euphoria escalated. My little cat head swam. My vision blurred in and out of focus. I stumbled in circles, unable to cease my movement. Right side up became upside down, and before I knew it, I hugged my cat body to the ground to help stop the world from spinning beneath me. Before the earth had a chance to stop, I blacked out.
And that was the wild and wacky Frank Edler reading a sample chapter from his latest book, Catcoin. The book is available right now, so click the link in the show notes for that book. And make sure you're following Frank as well on all of his social media. Check out his podcast right here on Project Entertainment Network, along with our other network, Pop Goods of Culture, and our sponsors, U-Tor-All and Scrivener. Don't forget to also hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out next week when we come back with an all-new author, a new book, and a new sample chapter. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to see you again real soon.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.